12 here across our network. Cloudy conditions all across Arkansas. And welcome back on to halftime. Let's go to the phones and bring in on Chris Marler. He is pinch hitting for our buddy Connor O'Gara, who is, of course, our usual Monday afternoon guest. Chris joins on the Saturday Down South podcast, the SDS podcast with Connor. So I guess he's exactly the guy to pinch hit for him. Chris, thanks for coming on today, man. What are you up to?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's good to talk with you guys. I am not up to much. I had a physical this morning where I had to weigh myself, so not a strong start to my Monday, I'll be honest.
Yeah, weighing on a Monday is never a good thing. But hey, at least you're somewhat healthy, I guess, right?
Exactly. That was the good news.
What do we make of this situation at LSU? They got two problems right now. One, they can't put together enough linemen for a practice. Lucky for them, this is happening when it's happened. Two, who the heck is left from last year, including the coaching staff? Like this has the possibility for LSU of being, I don't know if disastrous is the word for this upcoming season, but with the departure of Jamar Chase, he was to me going to be the anchor of this LSU offense, which is so rare to say for a wide receiver. What do you think him leaving or opting out does for LSU?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Obviously, I was, one of many that was surprised this weekend to learn that he was going to opt out. I think it makes sense for that young man because everywhere you look, he's going to be a projected top 5 pick. Should easily be a first-round pick. But talking about potentially getting top 5 money, what else does he really have to gain from playing this year? The bigger question for me is, the timing of it seems. It's the only reason I would say it'd be worrisome. They've already started practice. He's a guy that I know. I think got old takes exposed with the hashtag we want to play, and then a couple weeks later, obviously opting out. And you don't blame him for it, but you wonder: is it because of what he saw the first couple weeks of practice? Is it because he realized that this conference only slate it was going to be a lot more difficult? He was going to be facing double teams, all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's a disaster scenario for LSU. I think me and Connor both we're probably. On the forefront, I would think of the people that didn't think Coach O should have even ever been on the hot seat 2 years ago. And thankfully, with how good those teams have been over the past 2 seasons, that made us look smarter than we probably are. I don't think that even before the Jamar Chase thing, that LSU fans, if they're being honest with themselves, would really be looking at the season and thinking, there's no way we can't take a step back. You look at that on a surface level, you win 15 games, you have 14 players drafted in the NFL draft, 5 in the first round. But for me, it's especially on offense, the quarterback at LSU has been the kind of the weak link of that offense or team over the past, roughly decade. And you look at where they ranked in the SEC in touchdown passes from a quarterback. Before Joe Burrow, they were last or second to last for around 7 or 8 straight years before last season. And I think losing that kind of talent, not just where he was able to put up a lot of points in that offense, but be a generational type talent on top of losing your 2 coordinators, that's hard to replace. So I think they were already going to have a rebuilding year, and I think it's just got a lot more difficult by losing your best player on offense.
Yeah, I don't know there's any doubt. And if you're Chase too, and again, he already, like you're saying, is cemented where he's going to be in the draft. But you got to worry, especially when you're on a team that only has the 4 linemen that are dressing for practice, and think, what if this happens during the season? What if they're at least able to put together some sort of an offensive line, but they're down to third teamers? If I was a quarterback for any college football team, I would be very nervous just in the thought that half my offensive line could be out of a game or 2 weeks because of contact tracing, and then I'm left with third teamers, and I know I'm going to spend a lot of time on my back.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think when you look at going into the season there's so much uncertainty and so much unknown, and you don't want to predict anything like that. But it would be kind of almost ignorant of us to not think that at some point something like that could happen. And we've obviously already seen it in this early round of practicing with LSU. And I think there's definitely cause for concern, but it did happen at a good time for them. And I think it's a lesson to be learned for teams everywhere and players everywhere this season because, listen, I played college baseball at a very low-level D2 place, and I definitely don't know as much about being a premier college athlete like these Division I in premier SEC teams and stuff like that. But the thing you'll always hear on a team is accountability, responsibility, doing what's best for the rest of the team and putting yourself behind that. And I think you're going to have to see that more than ever this season when you talk about accountability and responsibility and keeping yourself safe, not doing anything, extracurricular like wise, going out into parties. All of those things could really derail a team's, whether it be a championship run or just a run to having a successful full season if kids aren't careful and not taking the proper precautions.
Speaking to Chris Marler here on Halftime, Chris, when you look at Arkansas's schedule, and I think a lot of Razorback fans, I think a lot of media members in the SEC would probably agree that the quote-unquote most winnable games for Arkansas would be the two M schools. You got Mississippi State, Missouri, and Ole Miss. Aside from those three, is there any other teams on the Arkansas schedule that you think Arkansas could maybe sneak up on or put a good scare into them this year?
Yeah, I think when you look at the schedule, the way it sets up, that A&M game, it seems like every single year Arkansas A&M is a close game. And, I think one of the big problems Arkansas has had over the past couple of years, and you point to almost the ineptitude on a quarterback they had, especially last season, and how bad Chad Morris truly was. But that defense, giving up almost over 5 touchdowns a game on average for the past 3 seasons and finishing last or second to last in the conference, I think that's what the big issue is. I think, coming into this season, I'm not as worried as much about the offense and if they're going to be able to put up points. But being able to stop teams from putting up points is where I think their biggest room for growth is. And you look at that A&M game, they have an off week before they play Texas A&M. And again, it seems like it's always a close game. I know A&M does as well, but I really think that's the place they could jump up and scare some folks because they will be overlooked going into that game, in my opinion. The other one I would say, and you mentioned it, Ole Miss. Ole Miss plays Bama the week before. Talk about Lane Kiffin, coming back to face his former coach that he doesn't really, I wouldn't say get along with, but definitely doesn't see eye to eye. That game in Oxford the week before could be a little bit of a trap game the following week, playing Arkansas.
One of your colleagues over at Saturday Down South brought up an article a couple weeks ago. It was Chandler Vessels talking about Felipe Franks or Rakeem Boyd and who is more critical for Arkansas finding success this year. We've seen what Rakeem Boyd can do in an abysmal Chad Morris offense during his time at Arkansas. So I feel like he might be the easy answer, but I'll ask you, for Arkansas to find success this season, is it another successful Rakeem Boyd season, or do you think it's Felipe Franks kind of coming off the injury and performing well for Arkansas? Who's more important for Arkansas' success this year?
Well, it's tough it's hard to put that into to give an answer just based on like who's more important, because I love Rakeem Boyd, man. Rakeem Boyd has been so much fun. It's such a bright spot for that team and that program in the past couple of years. But like you said, if he was able to do that in the Chad Morris offense in the past couple of seasons and what they have returning, especially in the offensive line, which I love that, I think they have a little bit more experience up front. And I think Rakeem Boyd, regardless, is going to get his yards. If he was able to get them last year, he's going to be able to get them this year. Felipe Franks is my answer. And that's because we saw just how bad the quarterback play was last year for Arkansas. It was tough to watch at times. And like I said, several times it just kind of seemed inept back there. And it didn't help that Chad Morris was changing in and out. It was like Chad Morris is like me trying to figure out where I want to go to dinner on Saturday night with my fiance. Just constantly changes his mind. Doesn't seem to ever have an answer. Made zero sense to me. I think Frank, I was really high on this young receiving core last year. And we talk a lot about Traylon Burks. Trey Knox is a kid that I think is going to have a breakout season and potentially be one of the top tier receivers in this conference. And that's saying a lot because this is a conference that's loaded at that position. I really think that's a guy, especially with his size and just physicality, he could really be a difference maker for this team. Franks has got to limit the mistakes that we saw him kind of get into from time to time at Florida. I think if he can just be consistent, limit the turnovers, they will have a really, really good offense.
I feel like this is an easy question, but just I have to ask you, how great was it this weekend to see college football? I mean, you had a lot of live high school football, particularly here in Arkansas. Bentonville High School was on ESPN. You saw different high school games being broadcasted here in Arkansas. But to see a college football game, and it's a little closer to our homes just because it was UCA, Central Arkansas. But in your mind, it was great to see college football back on this weekend.
Well, first off, I want to give a shout-out to UCA and that entire coaching staff for covering the spread. That was a big, big win for me to start the season. That was great.
Yes.
Second off, it really was great, man. It was awesome. I was sitting here, Saturday afternoon. I live in Atlanta, and I was. I'll admit it. I teared up just at the mere fact that college football came back and was on TV, because 2020 has been the worst. It's just been the absolute worst for so many reasons. And to be able to watch what I know is my favorite thing in the world, and I hope my fiance didn't hear that, but to be able to watch that finally and have this kind of comeback after we've seen so much uncertainty. We've seen some conferences kind of take the coward's way out and just announce 3 weeks prior to even having an FCS game that we're not going to be able to have a season. It was amazing. It was amazing, and I'm hoping, and I'm pretty confident there's going to be more of it a lot coming soon.
How did you get Vern Funquist as your Twitter handle?
Story time.
It was funny because, yeah, right. So your coworker Ty Richardson, we had a night out in Birmingham at Media Days last year on Wednesday night, and I, for the first time, was able to partake in just the absolute glory that is karaoke night at whatever bar in Birmingham, Alabama at Media Days.
Heard all about these nights.
He introduced me. Oh man, it was a blast from what I remember, and he introduced me to White Claws, and that's not something I really am proud to admit. And I just kept thinking, I was like, I need to change my Twitter handle. I've done stand-up comedy for about 9 years here in Atlanta, and I think it was like C. Marler Comedian, and I hated that because it just seems kind of weird and just begging for attention. I was like, what's a better way to beg for attention? How about a pun? So it's between Claw Feinbaum and then Vern Funquist, and I was like, I think Vern Funquist is probably the way to go, because I'm a big fan of that turtle laugh. I miss him every Saturday on the CBS game, and so it's a good way to pay respect and honor to a guy that's now retired, and we miss and love very much in the SEC.
Well, it's up there with Faux Pelini, so well done. Those are my two favorite.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll be listening to the SDS podcast next time out, Chris. Appreciate you pinch hitting. You hit a home run for Connor, but he might have struck out. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a great day.
Appreciate it, Chris.
You got it. Chris Marler of the Saturday Down South podcast.
So Ty's part of the reason for the Vern Funquist Twitter handle.
Yeah, when I first got a hold of Chris this morning, I'd asked him to come on the show, and I didn't tell him what the station was. So he asked, what's the station? Where do they air? Tell him what it is. He's like, oh, I love Ty Richardson. And I'm thinking, that is really not the way to get in with us.
It's really not.
Nah. No, that was nice. Nice. Yeah, I've heard about those karaoke nights, and they are legendary. Of course,
we three need to do a karaoke night.
We'll figure. Hey, we've got microphones right in front of us now. You guys have already sung on the show before. Don't do it again. 877-377-6963.